BIGBOOST. Today I'm showing you how I built my M235i. It's a N55 engine, 2016 model. And the reason I decided to make this video is people often ask me how I actually built my car, why it has so much power, and how does it handle it. There's some myth that the N55 can handle the power, and people actually don't know why it fails. And it's a lot of reasons. It's the parts you put to it, the maintenance you do to it, and the tuning you get to do to your car. So there's a lot of factors that actually are involved in how reliable your build is going to be. And without actually limiting the power you can get out of it. This car ran the 3.3 turbo kit, the first ever made, and it made 620 wheel horsepower. Car ran 10.3 at 136 miles per hour in the quarter mile. And to date, it's if I'm not mistaken, the quarter mile record for the N55 overall. And it currently has a GTX 1000 turbo kit, which actually has the 6130 record over all the N55, and it's actually nearing the F55 times as well as the B58 times, which shows how capable a good build is actually on an N55. So I'm gonna start off with the simple bolt-ons. The car's got an open air intake. The reason I decided to go this route, it's the factory air box. It's enclosed, and the only air entrance it's this pipe right here. This pipe, if your car doesn't have a hot climate package from the factory, it's going to have this air vent closed. And inside here, it has a little duct, rubber duct, that connects the hole through this wheel into the air box. So this hole is not big enough for the amount of air the turbo is taking in, so it actually creates a vacuum inside this pipe. This pipe, it's an air intake. It shouldn't have any pressure or any vacuum inside of it. It should only have the atmospheric pressure. With the closed air box, you start creating a vacuum, which is actually meaning there's a restriction inside the air box or the piping size diameter, or in this case, it's just this pipe, it's not big enough. Also, this pipe right here, it's rubber, so it actually collapses inside, and that's what also one of the reasons it may actually be getting like clogged. So it just runs an open air intake. With this pipe open, it's actually taking all the air in that goes through this grill, goes through the radiator, and also goes through this pipe right here. So it actually creates air movement inside the engine bay that allows us to have clean air and cold air into this intake. It's not like many people think that with this closed, it's just going to suck hot air, because the air movement inside is actually going to keep a lot of cool air inside here. It's got the charge pipe, aluminum. It's got the ER version, and of course it's got the turbo. The exhaust is factory. I'll just show you around when I lift the car up. And now I'm going to go into the turbo section. Well, you can also barely see it there. My car is running a Dodge Stage 2 high pressure fuel pump. Shout out to the guys at Dodge. Chris, he's a really nice guy. He has a turbo kit from us on his X1 N55 development car, and he's always helped me out. Forgot to mention, my port injection is from Fuelit. So early port injection systems they had, they've been super helpful. I've had the port injection and the low pressure fuel pump stage 3. It's going in the back. It's controlled by the Haltex as well. First stage 3 low pressure fuel pump ever out for F-Series N55. So guys, this is the turbo my car used to have. It's a 61mm turbo. the NPR version, the first turbo we offered for the N55 turbo kits. So it's a 3.3 turbo. It has a factory wastegate actuator connection, so it uses the factory electronic wastegate. Here are the holes that actually bolt the bracket into it that hold the actuator. The turbo that came off my car run 10.3, quarter mile at 136. With this turbo, car made 620 horsepower on the dyno. Then I moved on to the GTX series. So these two turbos are the GTX series we offer. The GTX 3582R Gen 2 and the GTX 3584RS, the Gen 2 as well. The reason I decided to go with the GTX 1000, the larger one, the 3584, it's simple. So this turbo is a 66mm inducer compressor wheel. This is a 67mm. The same blade design on the compressor. But if we take a look into the turbine, check this out, and then we'll see this one. You can see the difference. This turbine has one more blade. So although it's 1mm larger in the compressor wheel, it's one blade less in the turbine wheel with the same size. So it's actually going to run, it's going to spool faster because the turbine wheel weighs much less with this without this extra turbine blade. Now what happens with this, the design, you can see the back. On this one you can barely see the back plate of the turbo. So this turbine wheel has a better flow, and you can see that on the turbine maps Garrett provides. Both are a T3 divided housing. So I chose to go with this turbo because it will have a very similar spool, although having one blade less makes it weigh less. It's going to also take a little bit longer to spool because it's going to have less blades that actually are getting to be moved by the exhaust gases. But I actually believe the way you take off by taking off this blade, it's going to improve the response rather than having this extra blade that actually takes off top end of the car because it doesn't flow enough for the 3-liter engines. Because it's a small turbine wheel, it's a 62mm turbine wheel on both turbos on the extruder. So it's a bit small for a 3-liter engine, but as my car, it's a daily driver, it's stock motor. I just wanted to spool fast, it has to have a good power band, it's not revving more than 6,800, 7,000 RPMs. So I'm not in need of such a large turbine wheel because I only run it to 35 psi, and the back pressure is being built up by the size of the turbine wheel. It's not going to be such a significant increase having such a small turbine wheel. So I'll show you guys the turbo kit that's bolted on the car, and now I'm gonna go into the maintenance section of what I do to my car. My car is running Mobil 1 1550 oil. It's a race oil, and this actually creates a good film in between the rod bearings and the main bearings. So I change my oil every 2,000 miles. The car's running from fully 85, so it's just good maintenance. Engine oil filter, just inspect your oil filter every time you change your oil, make sure it's clean. And this is the oil I use on my car. So the main factor you have to take into account, it's the actual maintenance you give to it to make the power. Because a lot of people have, and it's a myth, people tell the N55 suffers from rod bearing failure. But I mean, the oil interval from the factory, it's too long, so it's starting to build up sludge and the auto start stop on the engine actually makes it to start wearing the bearings faster. So I turned that off. I changed my oil every 2,000 miles, and it's actually running up great. So my turbo kit, it's a standard GTX 1000 off the shelf, nothing custom. You can see the Turbo Smart wastegate on it, and what I did to it, I run custom lines. So a lot of people think that having an external wastegate, it's not desirable because you're going to have issues with the boost lines. But if you run it right, it's not going to be an issue. Look at my setup. My setup is a max solenoid wired into my Haltex ECU. I'll go into it later. And it's running to my wastegate. My wastegate, it's being controlled by this solenoid, and it has all the lines on braided stainless steel. So it's nearly impossible for it to fail. At just 30 pounds of pressure, these lines are built for brake use. So they actually handle like 2,000, 3,000 PSI of pressure. So at 30 PSI, it's not going to fail. They're stainless steel, so you're not going to have them break, explode, and it's a AN fitting, so it's -4 AN. It's not going to blow off the fittings. I also just capped off my blow valve, the factory diverter valve, and I'm running external blow valve mechanical on it, so I'm not using the factory style diverter valve. I'll just go to show you on the bottom side of the car. Okay guys, so this is the underneath of my car. It's got a custom dump tube, the first I made. Then I realized it wasn't needed because you can just run this all the way down, and this part it's not actually needed. So this is the first dump tube I made. I made it myself, I welded it myself, so it's not the best weld. That's why I have a fabricator for it. As you see in the dump pipe, they are much nicer. And okay, so I'll just show you around here. The coolant lines, these are the revised coolant lines of our turbo kit. These are the famous coolant lines people used to ask for. So you can see there's no leaks at all. It's fully Audi-Curve factory clamps, and the pipe actually runs through this hole right here, so it works for both X-Drive and rear-wheel drive cars. I'll show you around here. We made these custom Banjo bolts for the turbo kits. They're super nice. Compact head, 14mm, not a standard off-the-shelf bolt. They're super nice to install. Make it a lot easier since you can fit a small wrench in here and not a big 22mm standard 16 or 14mm Banjo bolt head. Coolant lines, so this line comes off the pipe I showed you right before. So this comes off the pipe that goes through the block and connects into the elbow that connects to the water pump. Now the water pump, a lot of people ask me how I put my water pump on. It's just bolted on top of the engine block. We remove the factory bracket, and since it bolts like an N55 E-chassis car, which uses the bolts on the engine block to bolt the water pump. So we remove the bracket and just bolt it straight into the engine block. It gives a lot of clearance for the coolant, for the intake pipe, and it makes it much easier for the install. Now going to the intercooler, this is a VRSF 6.5-inch race intercooler. They actually sponsor the build. I paid for the intercooler once I run the world record for the quarter mile. They reached out to me and they offered to refund the whole price I paid for the intercooler. If I shared all the data of the intaker temps, so they requested some data logs, I did it for them and they refunded the price for the intercooler. They're super nice guys. The charge pipe, and I actually like to keep my car super clean underneath, so you can see I'm a bit picky with my stuff, so every once in a while I just get it on the lift and wash it underneath. People also ask me a lot how I deal with the secondary ECUs. In my case it's a Haltex Elite 1500, but this also applies for the Reflex guys. So the Reflex Plus has to tap into a lot of sensors from the ECU. So it has to tap to the crank sensor, to the cam sensor, map sensor, to the CAN bus. So it's very important to have your wires organized. So you can see here my wiring harness. It's all organized. It's all wrapped. It's heat shrinked. It's soldered. It's fused as well. Everything on my wires are organized. I try to run them from the places as factory as possible. So see, this is my wiring harness for the mag solenoid. It comes out of here. I just try to run it as neatly as possible. With a neat wiring harness, I'm sure you can have certainty 100% that your stuff is going to be running good. My harness going all the way here, it's fully strapped down. You can see here as well my wirings. This is also from the Haltex. This is going to the injectors, going to the flex fuel. You can see it here, it's running as near as the OEM wiring as possible. The wires have holders, so it's fully designed for that. This is my fuel line as well, it's braided, and just keep everything neat. You can see everything here, it's organized. You're not going to have any issues with this stuff if you do everything organized. Okay, so now I'm going to show you my Haltex setup. It's an Elite 1500. I'm running everything through it: fuel pump, port injection, and boost control. Everything through it. Cool thing with this, it's people ask me how I keep my engine alive. So it's actually in this map right here. So you can see this is the whiskey duty cycle I run on it. So I have it on full spool up, so this is like gain on a boost controller, and then I have my boost ramping up. So I actually keep the torque down, which is what actually kills your engine. If you have too much low end torque at low RPMs, you're going to break your rods or bend them, because the inertia from moving an engine from 3000 RPMs, 700 foot-pounds of torque, is going to be a lot higher. So let's remember, power is torque times engine speed, or rotational speed, if you want to talk in general terms. So if you want to make power, you can make power in the top end. That's why my duty cycle is higher on the top end, and keep the torque down. So that's why I like to keep this. Actually keeps a flat torque curve, so you can actually feel the power coming on all the time. It's like a linear. It's not like a hybrid turbo or small turbo that you feel the power on the low end RPMs and then on up top it's set. With this, it's all the way from 3500 RPMs when it spools up into 7000 RPMs. So it's super nice. I can show you here lock. For example, I'm going to choose a lock for playback. This is a lock I did yesterday. And I'm going to go from lock. So I'm gonna select this part right here, which is where I start the run, and this is the cursor, so it's going to show you where the RPMs and everything is. So I'll just go here and you can see PSI and RPMs, and it will show you in the map as well. So I'm going into boost, slightly loading it up, and then I go, and you can see the boost starts ramping up. Let's play it again. So here I'm going slide throttle to go. Okay, so this is important. A lot of people ask me how I do with my car, so how I race it and how it doesn't blow the engine while racing. So I'll show you here. When I start building boost, so I'm at 4800 RPMs and I'm not full throttle yet, so boost is not still coming up. You'll see it here. As soon as I go into boost, my engine is already past the limit where it's actually trying to break the rods. So you see, it's going, and then I hit it. So as soon as I'm sure it's high enough in RPMs for the engine to have enough inertia of itself from the RPMs to not break the rods, that's when I hit it. That's why I never blow an engine racing. Never. I'll load another lock for you guys here. Should be third gear one. And on third gear, I actually come sooner because it's making less load, so it's making less torque. You can see now. Okay, I'll show you again. Stop, and I'll select only the ramp up rate here. So you see, from 3000 RPMs, I'm already hitting it. This is third, fourth, and fifth, all the way to 7000 RPMs. And that's super nice from the Haltex, so I can lock everything and it'll show me everything in live. I can adjust everything live. So I'll just unlock this, unload this. And you see my ignition is turned off. I tried to connect my Haltex and it doesn't connect. There are no devices connected. As soon as I turn on my ignition, it finds the elite. Okay, and as soon as I turn the ignition off, wait 5 seconds, the Haltex shuts down. This is something not many people do when wiring the external ECUs, and it's getting a switched. It's getting a switched power to the ECU. So when you do that, you start having issues with the battery draining because the ECU is going to start turning off an hour later, or 20 minutes later, or fully staying on because you take the power off where you are not getting switched 12 volts. I'm going to start my car. Everything's going to read correctly. It's actually building boost during the cold start. I'll just shut it off, and it reads everything live, so I can do live tuning. It just shut off the Haltex, and the software is super nice, super integrated, has a lot of functions. I have a fuel pressure sensor. I can get the TPS sensor connected, which right now it isn't, since I really don't need it right now. And so it has a lot of sensors you can connect to it. You can connect back pressure sensors. You can connect a training wheel for you to raise and lower boost from the inside of your car. You can have flex fuel sensor, and it's a lot of good stuff. I've been dealing with Haltex issues from a long time ago, so that's why I just use them. It's my preference. I mean, you don't have to use a Haltex. You can use a Reflex. It'll do the same. It's just my personal preference, and it makes my life easier because it's non ECU. Everything works. All the wiring, it's for sure is going to be correct, and so it's just less of a headache to set up. It's just less of a headache to tune it, and it's expensive though, but still I like it. That's my setup, and that's it. That's my car. My car is full interior. It's fully loaded. It's got the sunroof. It's got the Hammond Kardon speakers. I never got in my car the time we run the 10.3. The only thing I removed was this seat. The back seats I didn't. And well, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys learned something from this. Okay. Oh, I also